PACT Act was great, but the good from the PACT Act does not invalidate the bad, and these are real concerns. I'm going to give you 4 things that suck about the PACT Act, okay? The wrong attitude to have is, well, the PACT Act is good for me, so everyone else, it sucks to suck. We need to uplift all veterans no matter what era they served in, okay? These are in no order besides the last one, and I think the biggest reason the PACT Act sucks, but to start it off, I work with 2 older gentlemen, okay, who when the PACT Act came about, they were not happy. And turns out they were both veterans that spent time in Bosnia back in the 80s, way before my time, dealing with the whole Kosovo Serbian thing, which I'm no expert in, but they were around burn pits and other toxins. And to be honest with you, they felt forgotten. They felt like the VA and the American people had forgot that entire generation, right? The generation that was too young for Vietnam, but too old for Desert Shield Storm. They feel forgotten. And the PACT Act kind of solidified that through legislation to where, okay, you were next to a burn pit in Kosovo. That is not presumptive, right? TERA still exists, and we're going to talk about that, but that's not good in my book. They were forgotten about. That's the facts. And that brings us to TERA, okay? Toxic exposure risk activity, which, by the way, the screening was just updated as of today, August 1st, so check that out. But TERA is great if you can get service connected, right? TERA is good if you can get service connected, and what that's going to require is a CMP examiner to not just be properly trained in their discipline in that medical field, but to understand these toxins and the side effects that could lead to various conditions. Remember, your service connection does not have to be proven beyond the shadow of a doubt like you would if you were being convicted for a murder. The burden of proof for VA disability is at least as likely as not, meaning 50%. 50% chance yes, 50% chance no. That is what at least as likely as not means. So now we have a nurse practitioner looking at your disability and whether or not it's connected to firefighter foam or asbestos or airborne toxins or whatever else. And in short, they simply do not know the current literature or data to even give a positive opinion in the first place. So it's basically useless. It would be like asking my daughter to finish all of her chicken nuggets. Physically, she can do it. We know that, but it just ain't gonna happen. And that's TERA for you, in my opinion at least. Now, my biggest gripe about the PACT Act, my number 2 gripe really, is the VA was not, and arguably still is not postured for the PACT Act. The influx of claims created an enormous backlog that raters had to deal with. On top of that, you had untrained or minimally trained raters adjudicating claims because the backlog was so big that you had to hire new raters, but then those raters were pretty much worthless. So sure, the service connection is there, but that's where we start to see a lot of 0% being awarded because raters simply did not understand their job, okay? It was like World War III within the VA when the PACT Act was passed. Sure, there are amazing raters out there, but make no mistake, they all do not share the same skill set, and that's a fact. The VA's inability to man and train the VBA in preparation for the PACT Act pretty much did not exist, okay? The PACT Act has been in effect since January of 23, and it's been about a year and a half since then. So from January 23 to right now, 1.1 million PACT Act claims have been approved at a 70% approval rate, meaning there's a little over a 1.5 million PACT Act claims in total, with 7% of those, 1.1 million, being approved. That does not include any claim outside the PACT Act. So mental health, any of those. Sure, the VA is processing claims at an all-time high, but the majority of those claims being processed at an all-time high are not being adjudicated properly. The VA is just they're not playing by their own rules, okay? And OIG reports continue to bring this to light, and nobody cares. So nobody cares. That's largely in part due to automated processing systems. So you submit a claim, it's fully developed. That automated processing system can shoot you out to a CMP exam. Bada bing, bada boom. Now you're upset. Okay. So yeah, the VA has been fumbling this football since August of 22 when the PACT Act was signed and went into effect of 23 and has been like this ever since. And here's my number one bad thing to say about the PACT Act, and that's the healthcare side of the house. Listen, I am ecstatic that veterans are now eligible for healthcare, and I'm even more excited that veterans are choosing to use VA healthcare. It's most likely free within the context of PACT Act, which means veterans are getting, one, the care they need, and two, they're not paying for it, right? And if they are paying for it, it's not an extreme high cost. So that's a double good, and I think we can all agree with that. The only issue is that the VA can't do these two things. One is hire these specialty providers like those who provide or who specialize in herbicide exposures, right? That would be one example. Or two, the VA cannot keep those healthcare providers that they have trouble hiring. We see that with these critical skills incentive bonuses, which, by the way, did not even go to those who have the critical skills. That's a whole other topic. I've covered that before. Huge VA bonus scandal. And no one was held accountable for that. All right, but it is a slap in the face to preach about the PACT Act, to talk about everyone choosing VA healthcare, but then that VA healthcare is subpar. And again, just like everything else, are there amazing healthcare providers at the VA? Yes. Are there healthcare providers at the VA that are not so amazing? Also, yes. And listen, I'm a fan of the VA when the VA does what they're supposed to do. And it is important to highlight the good that the VA does. However, it is also important to highlight the bad news so we, the veteran community, can navigate the VA appropriately instead of just walking blind. You can live your whole life not knowing, and you're at the whim of someone else and trusting them that they're going to tell you the right information. The PACT Act is amazing, and that's a fact, okay? The PACT Act is amazing. Lots and lots of good did come out of the PACT Act, and that's going to continue. However, we cannot forget an entire generation of veterans who feel like they were forgotten, about from the VA and the American people. We cannot send millions of claims to the VA with a claims process that is inadequate at best, and we cannot send veterans to receive health care that is simply subpar. So VA, my message to you is keep doing what you're doing. You're doing good work, but do it better.